Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden. Happy New Year to you all. And Logan, you almost got your dream New Year's gift, which isn't a thing. But if the Dallas Cowboys had lost, I'm sure you would have been thrilled. But they didn't. They managed to sneak out with a win against the Detroit Lions, obviously amid some major officiating controversy. But with what we've seen from them over these last few weeks, getting blown out by the Bills, losing to the Dolphins, escaping this game, and from what we've seen from their NFC East pals, the Philadelphia Eagles, who is more fraudulent to you, the Cowboys or the Eagles?
I think Philadelphia is more fraudulent, Carson. I just think that they have a bigger fatal flaw for me, and that's that their defense can't stop anybody, you know?
Yeah.
I thought the Lions were going to roll over the Cowboys in this game. Jonathan Hankins misses another game up front for the Cowboys. I thought that, you know, with him out, relying on Mozzie Smith and this young core, I thought the Lions were going to be able to run all over them. And this wasn't a great game for Dallas by any means against Detroit, but to me what we've seen concretely throughout this entire season that the Eagles just can't stop anybody. And I just can't trust a defense that can't stop anyone to go through the playoffs. Right now, they have the number 29 scoring defense, the number 23 total defense by yardage. And I like these sample sizes, Carson, because we are through 16 games now. And so for the old NFL, this gives us a full sample size for complete stats.
You haven't adjusted yet, let's face it.
Well, yeah, no. It's going to take me probably another 10 years to get fully adjusted to the 17-game schedule. Well, you know, it took me a minute, Carson, after the 12-game schedule, and then we got the 14-game schedule back in the 40s. Yeah. Opposing quarterbacks versus Philly, again, 16 games now, 3,990 yards, 39 touchdowns to 8 picks. I mean, that sounds like an Aaron Rodgers season against Philly. Literally. So an average quarterback against the Eagles is playing like Aaron Rodgers, give or take, right? Opposing running backs versus Philly, 1,649 yards, 11 touchdowns. Damn, man, that's like a prime Michael Turner season. So what I'm saying is, in an average game, you're getting a really good freaking running back game and a really good quarterback game regardless. The Eagles' defense is just allowing themselves to get tore up on the average. And like I said, I don't really have a ton of confidence in either of these teams moving forward. But when we dig into the weeds a little further, so whose defense do I like more? Well, probably Dallas's. I think they get more pressure. I think they have bigger playmakers. Like Deron Bland can get burned 2 to 3 times a game, but he can also make up for it with a game-breaking play. Micah Parsons is probably the best defensive player out of either of these two teams. When I dig into the weeds offensively, whose offense is clicking more? This is a bit more of a toss-up. You could say the Eagles because you like their running game a little more, but I'm going to take Dallas's offense because I think Dak Prescott is playing quarterback at a higher level than Jalen Hurts. And him and CeeDee Lamb, I just prefer as a offensive duo. So it's really marginal. I think both of these teams I would consider to be fraudulent. I don't really buy into either of these teams and their title hopes anymore. I think they're both fake, but to me, I would probably trust the Cowboys to get to the NFC title game more than Philly at this point if I had to bet on somebody. I just can't trust a team with a defense this bad to do anything in the playoffs.
I'm with you. I think it's pretty easily Philly. I don't know if I would classify the Cowboys as frauds. Are they the powerhouse that some people have made them out to be at various points this season? No, but this has been my point throughout the year. If we are going to write off everybody with significant flaws, everybody who has had really ugly losses as frauds, then there's 2 teams in the NFL this year who aren't fraudulent. There's 1 in each conference. The Cowboys have really only played 1 bad game since they lost to the Niners. Like that Dolphins game, that's against a good football team. They had real chances to win it. This Lions game, of course, they were gifted at the end by blown officiating. And I think it's pretty clear now that Taylor Decker declared himself eligible, went over to the official, and the official just wasn't paying attention. It's a pretty obvious situation when he makes a point to go over there and then lines up as the eligible receiver and is the guy who the play is drawn up for. There's no question that the officials blew that. But it also shouldn't have been a game because of the phantom tripping called on the Cowboys, which should have been called on Aiden Hutchinson. Probably an even more mind-blowing gaffe by the officials on the previous series, which would have ended the game. The Lions never would have gotten the ball back. So I think that because it's the Cowboys, there is a tendency to look at that. And because it was the final play of the game effectively and just write it off. But again, if the officials hadn't blown it in the first place against them, then they would have gotten out of there with a win. But Philly has hardly played a good game in this half of the season. And I was a huge Eagles optimist coming into this year. I thought that Jalen Hurts had been playing at an unbelievable level. I totally bought into that defense, even with the really decimation of their linebacking core. I wasn't too worried about the losses of their coordinators. They were my Super Bowl pick. And even as we had seen some concerning trends from them as they found their way at 10-1, still getting outgained, winning some of these games in sort of miraculous fashion, I still thought this team is really, really good. But now it's gone on for too long, way too long. And they've stopped winning those games in those sort of fluky, miraculous ways. They've been outgained in 7 of their last 9 games by an average of 73 yards per game in that time, bro. That is the mark of an awful football team. They've now lost 4 of their last 5. And the defense is absolutely the majorly concerning unit here. The Cardinals scored touchdowns on their last 4 drives, and they got into the red zone on every single drive. And I thought Kyler was awesome in this game, but come on, man. That is as little resistance as you would see from any defense in the league, which at this point we should expect. The Eagles are 29th in scoring defense. You mentioned, like, teams light them up week in, week out. And I definitely think that I underestimated how major losing both Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon was. I think that we've seen Steichen do some awesome stuff in Indianapolis. I think that their play calling has been less creative. I think that they have less of an identity as a football team. They're not as crazy dominant running the football. That's still what they like to do, dominate in the trenches. But last year, they ran for over 2,500 yards, 32 touchdowns. They were just in complete control of every game, running it down your throat. And they haven't been able to do it at that level this year. And then Jalen Hurts has struggled to adjust this year. He hasn't been good reading more zone looks. He hasn't been very good as a decision maker. He's held on to the ball for too long at times. He struggled with turnovers. He is just not the level of quarterback that he was. And I do wonder if having a better guiding presence like a Shane Steichen still in that room could have helped him more with those adjustments. And then defensively, I think it is really a personnel issue because those linebackers suck and the secondary has taken a real step back. But even the front last year was as good as we've seen. They had 70 sacks, bro. They were second in pressure rate. And then through the draft, it felt like they got arguably even more stacked this year despite losing Javon Hargrave. And they're still good there, but they're 12th in pressure rate. It hasn't been as overwhelmingly dominant. This past game, it's weird. They've got Hassan Reddick dropping into coverage a lot when they pretty clearly need to be getting more pressure. That's a coaching issue. They're just not a very good football team right now. And there's nobody who I really trust on this team. The Cowboys defense maybe hasn't been consistently tested against the best competition, but they've held up these last 2 weeks. Didn't hold up against the Bills, didn't hold up against the Niners earlier in the year, but they just held the Dolphins and Lions to 41 points combined. Those are 2 of the best offenses in football. And I certainly trust Dak Prescott more than I trust Jalen Hurts right now. So if you have the defense and the quarterback advantages, I am generally going to prefer you. I think the Cowboys have those. I think that they have them by a pretty wide margin right now. They're just playing better football.
100%. I agree with everything you just said. And another fatal flaw that I think we have to point out with Dallas, too, you bring up the Lions game, Carson. I think Mike McCarthy has to be a swing factor for me, too, because I do just want to mention really quickly, like you talk about that final sequence in that Lions game, a couple final things, just because that game has plucked my nerves. It has been on my mind literally since it happened Saturday night. I hate watching games end like that. One, another reason that game shouldn't have gotten down to the wire, poor play calling. I just think Mike McCarthy should have ran the ball. You know, you end up burning a couple timeouts from Detroit because you complete some passes, but I just think you run the ball 3 times there. You trust your defense. I just think you mishandled that. I think they mishandled the defensive sequence there where the Lions march down the field. They run prevent defense. Sometimes prevent works. Other times I just think it allows for big comebacks like that. But the final moments, Carson, you just can't have shit in Detroit, man. You can't. Can we let Detroit fans have one good football moment for their life? Like, I'd say outside of maybe the Bills or the Vikings, or no, I mean, Detroit and Cleveland are probably the most tortured. Detroit more than Cleveland, because Cleveland, if you were around in the 40s and 50s, at least you have some NFL titles. Vikings and Bills fans have at least lost in the Super Bowl. Detroit fans don't have anything, man. You took the Calvin game away from you. You took the last Cowboys playoff game they had with the Pettigrew play away from them, in Jerry World, might I add. And here, celebrating. I mean, the refs literally wait an entire minute before they come back and go, there's a flag on the field. I'm assuming all of Detroit was celebrating this victory. They just stole that one from there. But this is a long-winded way of saying the Lions should have had no way of coming back in that game anyway. And it's just another reason for me to not believe in the Dallas Cowboys. So, frankly, I think both of these teams are frauds. Let me ask you this, Carson. For both of these teams, do you think either of them actually get to the NFC title game?
Probably. That's the thing. Everybody is significantly flawed here. Now, the challenge is that the Cowboys, unless they win this next week and the Eagles lose, which, by the way, isn't impossible. Like, I have full confidence that the Cowboys are going to beat the Commanders, and that's the difference. I don't even have full confidence that the Eagles are going to beat the Giants. I think that they will, but if the Cowboys can win the division so that they don't have to be on the road for the entirety of their playoff run, then I think that they are a better team than the Lions on a neutral field. I think that they are a better team than the Eagles on a neutral field. Really? I think that they are the best of that bunch after the Niners. Yeah, I do, because I think that the Lions defense is also really, really flawed, like significantly worse than the Cowboys, and I trust them more at the quarterback position. I agree with you on the McCarthy point. Like, you can't ignore his track record in this thing with the Cowboys where they have just managed to blow games late. But I think that they are talented enough in a deeply flawed NFC that they are still a top 2 team to me. The one thing I will add about that Lions game is I totally feel for Dan Campbell. Super frustrating. At the same time, he's like being a caricature of himself when he goes for 2 after the penalty from 7 yards out. That's ridiculous. Theo tweeted out a great stat about the Lions on 3rd and 7+, I think, had like a 35% success rate, and the Cowboys only allowed like 33% of conversions in that situation. Like, I don't know if he just needs that to keep himself alive. Like, if that's what he's living for every Sunday, perhaps the sexual thrill of going for it in every situation possible. But it's like, dude, you have a responsibility. And then after that, you get bailed out because of the offsides after Jared Goff throws a pick, and you go for it again. It's like at some point the football gods are trying to send you a message, man. Just take the extra point and go to overtime. And Dan Campbell can't.
Carson, he's doing it for Miss Campbell, man. Okay? He's doing it for Mrs. Campbell.
Yeah, it seems that way, dude.
She needs it. I agree with you wholeheartedly. After the first attempt doesn't work, after the second attempt doesn't work, I'm just taking the extra point. We're going into OT, and we're going to re-roll. We're going to reshuffle here. But also, you already lost the element of surprise, so I completely agree with that. And you already blew your one great
best play call. And you had it dialed up.
The one thing about that play, though, is I've heard the reports are that Dan Campbell, specifically going into that game, said to the officials pregame, "We are running this play. Be prepared. Be ready for it." And yet the refs still blow it. And again, like you said, dude, the referee mails it in. Dan Skipper, number 70, traditionally reports as eligible. So he sees everybody walk up and just naturally assumes that Skipper is going to be the one that reports eligible. That's not how the Lions line up. Again, everybody said it. You practice this over and over again. The Lions did everything right. And the Cowboys should have had an opportunity to go down the field and either kick a field goal to win the game or, to score points. The refs blew that one. But I disagree with you. I think I have the Lions as my number 2 team. And I do think the Cowboys' defense is better. I think that Dak Prescott is playing better ball. But I just believe in the Lions in the trenches a little more. And that's why I like them more. It's really marginal. But I think that Dallas and Detroit are next to each other. And barring a Jared Goff performance, I think I would concretely take the Lions, but that's kind of the one thing holding me back. I would marginally have the Lions above the Cowboys at this point.
It's close. Again, I think that dynamic pass rush, better defense plus better quarterback formula is pretty damn good. And the officials did blow it, and it seems like Brad Allen's crew is not going to be officiating in the postseason, and I have no problem with that. Like, you cannot have that sort of impact on a game in multiple instances. And it's not like a 50-50 call, full game speed, right? You just don't see things fully correctly. It's basic procedural stuff. It's calling a penalty on the wrong team. It's completely misunderstanding a situation that has been apparently meticulously explained to you beforehand. Like, that is inexcusably bad stuff, and it does suck to see, and it really does make you wonder if you can ever have shit in Detroit. It's not looking great. But outside of that Cowboys-Lions matchup, Logan, maybe the premier game on the slate for this past weekend was Ravens-Dolphins. And boy, did Baltimore give them a good old-fashioned whooping. Did that say more about the Ravens' dominance or Miami's issues, Logan?
I'd say definitely a healthy dose of both. Baltimore, I do think, is the best team in football, and I think we can crown them that at this point. What they do defensively from top to bottom in terms of defensive talent and scheme, Ben Solak did a great breakdown of how Kansas City and how they pre-rotate at the line of scrimmage and how they use pre-snap motion against Miami. He did a great breakdown on that, and just talked about how they could kind of weaponize Miami's pre-snap motion against them. And Baltimore, like Spags, does a lot of pre-rotating at the line of scrimmage to disguise their coverages and are just uber talented top to bottom. And this is even a game where Kyle Hamilton doesn't play. You know what I mean? I think Kyle Hamilton is the second best safety in all of football behind Minkah Fitzpatrick, who has just unfortunately not been healthy at all this season. So Kyle Hamilton has been playing effectively like the best safety in football. And so I think that played a big part of it. I think that Baltimore and Kansas City are the two best defenses when it comes to playing against Tua. So I think this was always going to be a tough game. But this has been a proven track record thing here for Miami, Carson, this season. The Dolphins are 10-1 versus teams 500 or worse, and they're 1-4 versus teams better than 500. They've got the 21st ranked scoring defense. They've got the 30th ranked red zone defense, and very similar to how I feel about Philadelphia. I just don't trust this defense enough to help their offense win multiple playoff games. Maybe Miami can eke out one, but against top competition, I just don't think they hold a candle to them. I mean, I think this is an abysmal pass defense, and they've just got poor coverage over the middle of the field. Baltimore had them in jail, it felt like, all game with how they were running the ball, where any play action, linebackers have to bite and drop. Guys are open over the middle of the field. And this was a team that was number one in pressure rate and number one in overall pressure on the season, but they lose Bradley Chubb, ironically, to an ACL injury in a 4-score game. I mean, Chubb shouldn't even be out there. It's just a really bad beat and bad break for Miami. And so with that loss, I mean, they don't really have any big-time playmakers. I mean, shout out Jalen Ramsey. Like, he's just not that big of a needle mover to me to, he doesn't make up for an entire defensive shortcomings. And the one on the flip side of this, I do think that Lamar has been consistently disrespected as a passer, Carson. Like, I've been seeing these discussions online where people are like, oh, is Lamar a top 10 passer? Is he a top 15? Look, guys, Lamar's a top 5 passer, and you can make an argument that he's a top 3 passer. I don't get why look, guys, just because he's not top 5 and top 10 in passer rating and top 3 in passing yards, and just because Lamar's name doesn't come up with all of the passing numbers for quarterbacks, we don't have to just go off of stats, guys. Brock Purdy is not the best quarterback in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, we can watch the tape and we can go, Lamar is a top 5 passer in the NFL, because he is. The patience that we've seen this year. What really baffles me, Carson, is when he has time back there and he will take 1 or 2 steps up in the pocket and still make a throw almost parallel to the line of scrimmage with his body. All the arm angles, the arm ability, the accuracy. We don't have to have the numbers to back up that Lamar is this good as a passer. We can watch the tape and see how accurate and on time and how he's dissecting these defenses and making these great decisions and being so patient in the pocket. I think that's the guy that to me has been really disrespected in all of this, and that's something that I thought this game spoke volumes to even more, is that Lamar is every bit of the passer that we have praised him to be. And with these weapons, I mean, you see the big Zay Flowers TD, the Odell Beckham fade catch in the corner. Mm-hmm. It's just the best group of weapons that he's had. So I think it's a little bit of both. This is the best defense in the NFL with the best defensive schemer in the NFL, with the MVP of the league that is playing the best as a pocket passer of his entire career, with the best weapons of his career, with the best offensive coordinator of his career. It's just, we saw the best team in football go up against a team that I think is slightly overrated. I don't think that the Dolphins are fake by any means, but they are, I think, in the ethos and the totality of the NFL, a little overrated. It's a little bit of both. I would say this spoke more to probably to Baltimore's dominance, though. I just think Baltimore is everything that we have touted them up to be throughout this season.
Totally agree with just about everything that you've said. I think that this told us more about the Ravens. This was just a smackdown, and Lamar was perfect in this game. I would say it's the best quarterback performance of the year. He was deadly accurate. His touch was amazing. And then he did all of the usual insane Lamar stuff, making dudes miss, showing the raw arm talent. And his receivers made some awesome plays in this game.
Mm-hmm.
But on that OBJ catch, Lamar made an insane throw, like damn near sidearmed, not really stepping into it, 40 yards downfield, right on target. On that likely catch, which was an awesome one-handed snag, that only comes after a sick sidearm throw by Lamar as he's taking a hit, putting the ball where only his guy can get it on a 4th and 7. And I see people going out there and somehow making this game about the performances from his receivers. No other elite quarterback would be getting hit with the his receivers made it happen take than Lamar after playing a perfect football game. Like, does Joe Burrow get hit with that when his elite receivers have made elite plays every game up to this point in his career? No. But when Lamar, who has played with as little receiving talent as any elite quarterback since he came into the league, has some dude step up, there's immediately some rush to discredit him. It is just absurd. He is the MVP. He's a hell of a lot closer to the second best quarterback in the NFL than the fourth, Logan.
Damn right. Damn
right. And I'm
right.
as big of a Josh Allen defender as there is. But Lamar's been better this year. He's just been more consistent. He hasn't had that one dud, that what are you doing performance like Josh has. He has been unbelievable this entire season. And I don't know if I would say he's a top 5 pure passer. He's certainly top 10. He's definitely in that top 7. I'm just thinking, when you're looking at a fully healthy league with Herbert, with Burrow, with Matt Stafford, the level that he's playing at, I'm taking
Lamar,
range.
Man.
As a pure passer?
You want to do a thought exercise? That list ain't too long. I would go Mahomes. I would go Josh Allen. I would go Burrow, Herbert, Lamar. I think he's top 5 for me. The guy on the cusp would be Stafford. Stafford would be the guy that I might have
Stafford's
a little
pure
debate
passer
about.
Than Lamar. I think he's a better pure passer than Lamar. I think he's got even more arm talent. I think he's even more accurate. I think he's got even more variety. Stafford is crazy as a pure passer.
I just don't want to take for granted, too, because I think when we do that, when we go pure passer, it's like, are you taking away too? For example, when Lamar scrambles and buys himself time, to extend a play and to make a pass, like, I just think we can kind of, where do we draw the line for pure passer? You know what I mean? And I think that's the thing, too, that when we're talking about pure passers, I just don't know why we paint that into the box. There's a huge conglomerate, Carson, that I think that still thinks that Lamar Jackson cannot win a Super Bowl. And that is something that I'm really rooting for this season in these playoffs. For Lamar not only to win a playoff game, I would love for the Ravens to make a Super Bowl push to the Super Bowl, because there's still this huge contingency of NFL fans that think that you cannot win a Super Bowl with this kind of quarterback. And you can take some of the undertones with that, because I think there are some that come with that statement. But it's like, I don't know how you can still hold that belief when we've seen so many guys get so close. We saw Cam Newton get to a Super Bowl, and if he dives on a fumble, we may not still believe that about QBs. If Jalen Hurts, if Mahomes doesn't steal that game away from him, do we still feel that way? And there's still this belief that Lamar can't win a playoff game, can't get it done in the big game, will never win a Super Bowl because of his style of play and maybe because of his skin tone. I believe in Lamar. I fully believe in Lamar, and I want him to get that done, because I want him to get that off of his back and to get that off of his shoulders, man. Just because there's just a lot of hate. There's a lot of hate that Lamar gets that, just like you said, man, other quarterbacks don't. He just gets a ton of extra criticism, man, that I hate. No other quarterback, I feel, gets as constantly. You can throw out Tua or Purdy, but when I say that, I'm saying that these are guys that aren't even in the same conversation of Lamar. People are just so slow to give credit and to praise Lamar, and I don't get it. My dad has finally come around.
Let's go, Jimmy.
It took a damn 300-yard, 5 TD performance, but I called him after during the Steelers game, and he was like, I'm going to give my flowers to Lamar. And I told him, it's about damn time, dude.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for him this year, man, because there's just I'm tired of the haters on Lamar, man. If this year doesn't do it for you, man, I don't know what will.
Yeah. And whether he's top 5 or top 7 as a pure passer, there's no question that he's elite there. And the people who try to deride that part of his game are just wrong. The arm talent is elite. The pocket presence is elite. The accuracy, the timing, the touch, it's all damn good. And he has come far in those respects since he came into the league. And then when you combine that with the fact that he is the single most elusive, the most dangerous runner that we've ever seen at the quarterback position, he's just undeniably a top 3 offensive engine in football. He is undeniably a top 3 guy that I want for a playoff run. You can't make those arguments having concerns about him as a passer. Not anymore, dude. He has just so convincingly shut those people up. And if you're going to hold on to that take, you're just wrong. And you're going to be proven conclusively wrong. I am so impressed by Lamar every single game. And the other side of what was so resoundingly impressive about this Ravens performance was this defense again, man. I really do think this is the best defense in football now. 3 straight weeks, they have held the Jags with T-Law, when he was healthy, to 7. Then the Niners to 19. Even that, they scored in garbage time. And then the Dolphins to 19. And those last 2 are both top 3 scoring offenses. As we discussed last week, they are elite at almost every single position. I mean, more than half of their starters could reasonably be Pro Bowlers, and then they have another handful at least of guys who are just below that level, and they just make huge play after huge play. So I'm with you. This, to me, does cement them as my Super Bowl favorite. After last week, I still said I think I'm leaning Niners, although I've talked about how I prefer that quarterback and defense formula, and the Ravens had those edges, but I thought the Niners are so good offensively. The scheming, what they can do in the trenches, running the ball, their skill position talent, that's so great, and their defense is still damn good. But I think the Ravens are just playing better football right now. I think the defense is that stifling. I think Lamar is that overwhelmingly great that they have to be number 1. And for the Dolphins, this really just exposed the defense a bit. And I think people have started to really warm up on that unit. And I even gave them some props after that Cowboys game. I thought they played pretty well. But they have largely been producing against really subpar competition. I don't buy into that as a unit that scares me at all, especially without Bradley Chubb. Couldn't stop the run. Couldn't finish sacks versus Lamar at the very least, which is tough to do, but he made them pay every time. And then offensively, Tua made a couple of costly mistakes in this one, which happens from time to time. They just, as a football team, do not scare me. And they're good, but if you don't have that elite singular quarterback talent, and if you have a significantly flawed defense, then I just can't really buy into you for a playoff run. College football fans, the championship is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook is making sure you can throw down on the epic showdown for a shot at big bucks. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting $5 on the championship game.
Download the app now and use code NERDS. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on college football. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code NERDS. The crown is yours.
Logan, it's time to talk about your Steelers because, oh my goodness, I was so sure that I was going to be buying you a toupee. 2 weeks ago, I mean, I had it basically ready to go. Some beautiful waves for you, Logan. You're going to love it. But now they have a chance. And the secret ingredient in all of this has been the switch to Mason Rudolph at quarterback in these past 2 weeks. Logan, I have to ask, do you think that Pittsburgh is better off with Rudolph than Kenny Pickett?
I don't think. I will tell you point blank, the Pittsburgh Steelers are better with Mason Rudolph at quarterback instead of Kenny Pickett. And you won't find a guy more surprised about this than me. I said from day one when I saw Mason Rudolph take the field, the game is too fast for him. He doesn't process the game well enough. The old adage, though, Carson, one of my favorite phrases that I've quoted countless times on this show, though, is that Bill Walsh, you don't know what you have in a quarterback, until you get 24 games, season and a half. That amount of game tape. And what I mean by that, too, is a guy like Geno Smith, wrote him off. He didn't write back. And that was a big storyline heading into this week, the dynamic of Geno bouncing back from where he started, got completely written off, earned back a starting job. Mason Rudolph was in that same boat. And like I said, you won't find a guy more surprised about this. Mason Rudolph is the cross-eyed quarterback, man. He got decked in the head with a helmet. I mean, dude, you just don't bounce back from that, man. How can you be taken as a legitimate quarterback after that? And coming into this game, my roommate said the exact same thing, Carson. He said Mason Rudolph is better than Kenny Pickett. And I said, point blank, I said, Danny, you're an idiot. I said, one good game does not a quarterback make. And then Mason Rudolph comes out here and does this again. Now, I want to go to bat here for Kenny Pickett because I think he's been a bit of a punching bag in these past 2 weeks. Kenny Pickett is a serviceable quarterback. He is a borderline average to good QB that I do not mind as a starter. This season, he was 7-4 as a starter in games that he finished. Last season, he was 7-4 as a starter in games he finished. In his career, he is 14-8 as a starter. He led 4 game-winning drives as a rookie. He has 14 turnovers in 25 games. Bottom line, you can win games with Kenny. He can make timely plays and throws, and he cannot turn the ball over. But Kenny Pickett is not a big-time playmaker. Mason Rudolph is. Mason Rudolph can make big plays, and that is a big-time difference. Now, I want to give the Steelers as a whole a big amount of credit for this game, too. We quite literally have not run the ball like this in nearly 20 years. They threw up a stat during the broadcast. We had 145 rushing yards in the first half. That's the most since 2006 versus the Kansas City Chiefs. In the first half, over 140 yards, 2 TDs, 7.1 yards per carry. Warren and Najee have really come on. They're the 4th Steelers duo to eclipse 1,000 scrimmage yards together in Steelers history. And the O-line looked ferocious. But as you mentioned, the Steelers have named Mason Rudolph as the starting quarterback moving forward. And he looks really poised, Carson. The difference between him and Kenny Pickett is Mason Rudolph is not playing scared. Scared money doesn't make any money, and Mason Rudolph is playing like a quarterback that doesn't have anything to lose. One of the biggest flaws with Kenny Pickett is that he bails on clean pockets. He doesn't wait for routes and concepts to develop. Mason Rudolph isn't scared in the pocket. He will stand in there amidst pressure, under duress, and he will deliver balls on ropes. I mean, Mason fired me up. I haven't had that kind of fire and passion during a game watching a quarterback since Big Ben was out there. And the results say the same thing. The Steelers haven't had back-to-back 30-point games in 2 years. We haven't had a 30-point game under Kenny Pickett, period.
Yeah.
And Mason is standing in there delivering balls on time, on ropes, like he's throwing rockets. And the biggest thing in all this to me is that Mason Rudolph is throwing the ball to George Pickens. Oh my God, who would have guessed it? You get the ball to a playmaker and good things happen. I didn't go to bat for George, and I'm wrong for that. You know, George not blocking, George being frustrated. Well, when you're this damn good and you're not getting the ball, maybe you should be frustrated. The last 2 weeks, 11 catches, 326 yards, 2 TDs. That's a major component of this to me, Carson. I can talk about the poise, the presence, the arm talent. He's getting the ball to the playmaker, and that's the bottom line. I made a meme on my Twitter that I've been sending out periodically when George makes a play. It's a play on the old Keyshawn Johnson book when he was a rookie from 1993, I believe it was, or 94. Just throw me the damn ball. It's the same thing with Pickens, man. Just get him the rock and let him go to work. That, to me, has been a huge part of this offense, is that he's not afraid to get Pickens the ball, and Pickens makes plays. Pickens has been making tough catch after tough catch. There's one where it's a 3rd down, and he throws it too high. Pickens goes up in skies to get it. There's another play where Pickens literally pins a ball between his legs to make a catch. The kid's a freak. He's a bona fide number 1 receiver, and he needs a quarterback to get him the rock. Mason is not afraid to make big throws. He's not afraid to stay in the pocket. He gets the ball to George Pickens, and he's hungry. There's a hunger and a fire and a desire that I just was not getting with Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
Mason's playing like our best quarterback. I have no issue with starting him for Week 18, and I do think this brings into a bunch of big questions about Kenny Pickett's future as a Pittsburgh Steeler. I don't know if the Steelers are going to bring him back as the starter. I don't know what direction they're heading in, but the bottom line is that Mason Rudolph gives the Pittsburgh Steelers the best chance to win individual football games and to go on a playoff run, bottom line. And I think he's going to win next week against Baltimore. I think he's going to get us into the playoffs, and I'm all for it, man. I don't really care who gives the Steelers the best chance to win, but put them under center. And Mason's been doing that, man. I'm all aboard the Mason Rudolph train.
Yeah, he's pretty clearly played the 2 best games of any Pittsburgh quarterback all season in his 2 starts. Kenny had 1 game all year with 240-plus yards passing. Mason has gone over 270 and both. That's true. That's true, and I think that does factor into this equation to some extent, the liberation from Matt Canada. But Kenny didn't have a single game this year averaging 10 yards per pass attempt. Mason has cleared that in both. Kenny didn't lead the Steelers to score over 26 points in a single game. They were averaging 16 points per game under Kenny. They have hit 30 in both of Mason's starts. And I do have to ask, you say that you view Kenny still as an average to maybe slightly below average starter. I just can't get there, man. I think he's a backup. I think he's a good backup, but what you're talking about with the record, with limiting turnovers, that's the sort of stuff that you can only survive or that you can only reward when you're playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers and your defense is winning you games. Like, nowhere else in the league are you winning more than 30% of your games with Kenny Pickett at quarterback.
How can we fault Kenny Pickett for winning football? That's the one issue I have with all this.
It's not faulting him. It's an attribution error.
I don't disagree with your fundamental take, but it's like everybody wants to go, is Mitch Trubisky really that much worse than Kenny Pickett? That's the reason we lost. If Kenny Pickett starts those games, we win.
But Mason Rudolph, who was your third stringer, who most people probably thought wasn't an NFL quarterback, steps in and is immediately significantly better. I'm just saying, if we're talking about average starters, okay, if we're looking at a healthy league, here are the dudes who I think are in the range of like around that 16th to 20th best quarterback. It's like Jordan Love. I mean, there are miles between him and Kenny Pickett. Justin Fields, way better. Russell Wilson, I think, is way better.
When I say that, he's not a... He's like 25 to 32. What I'm saying is he could start
so that's
for an
not
NFL
in the
team.
Average range. That's a guy who
Kenny's,
is like going to hop from team to team, year to year, and maybe like a stopgap.
But I think that's what an average quarterback is nowadays. I don't mean average in terms of 1 to 32. I mean average, and he's a good quarterback. Like, he's in that tier. I don't think he's like league average. I'm saying that he's just a serviceable guy.
Okay, he's serviceable. Okay.
Yeah, like, I just think Kenny has been unfairly criticized. Really, he's flawed. He's flawed. He does not stay in the pocket and makes throws. That is the biggest thing with Kenny Pickett when it comes down to it. His fatal flaw as a quarterback is he is jittery. He's got happy feet. You know what I mean? Like, when Kenny gets scared in the pocket, he bails. He does not let plays develop. Mason doesn't play scared. Mason doesn't bail on clean pockets. That's a huge difference maker. We've seen it. Like, I think Mason's a better quarterback, and it's not resounding on Kenny. And I just think people are way too low on Kenny because they just look at the raw numbers, man.
I just don't know why you would have confidence in him as the guy. Like,
I've seen it. Kenny has won us games. I don't, we can win games with Kenny.
Points?
Kenny has won us games.
Logan, Mason Rudolph is better than him. Is Mason Rudolph the quarterback you want for the future?
Hell nah.
Exactly. So my point is just, what this has shown me is not that Mason Rudolph is the guy. It is that your offense immediately looks better and more dynamic with him at the helm because he lets it rip more. Because he does hang in the pocket. He makes big-time throws, more so than Kenny at least. He will actually let a deep ball rip, and that does unlock what Pickens can do more. He has also just energized this whole team. As you said, like, I don't think I've seen Najee run this hard ever, really. Yeah. Like, they are definitely playing with some extra pep in their step, but this just shows me that Kenny's not the guy, and I think that we've already known that, and I think that you're better off. If you want to do this whole win-now thing that Mike Tomlin and the Steelers are obsessed with, then go get a Kirk Cousins. Go get a veteran quarterback who is going to play the position at a much higher level than either of these guys, who isn't like a top-tier elevator.
I don't know,
man. You're not going to be able to get one of those guys, but, I mean, with Kirk Cousins, right, if this team's going to win 9 or 10 games with the Kenny and Rudolph and Mitch tag team, they can win 12 with Kirk.
I'm kind of rocking with Mason, man. Mason hasn't really given me any reason to doubt him. The one thing I will say...
So, if he was the day one starter next year, would you be good with that?
I'd be okay with him starting. I would want a new backup. I'd want to get rid of Mitch, and I'd want to get a new, some fresh meat in there. I think we can win 9 games again with Mason Rudolph. Like, it's not an ideal situation.
What does that do for you, though, Logan? How many years can you win 9 games?
That's the big question about the Mike Tomlin era, isn't it? How many times can Steelers fans win 9 games, have the 18th pick, and not win a playoff game? It's about getting over the hump, and that's the thing I'm saying with Mason is Give me 3 weeks. We need to see if Mason wins us a playoff game. Oh my God, I'm all aboard. Let's go, baby. Run it back next year. We haven't won a playoff game in 7 years.
Yeah.
The Steelers are kind of stuck either way, but Mason gives us the best opportunity to win. I wouldn't want, if our option is Kirk Cousins or Mason Rudolph, I'd just rather have Mason. I don't think there's a reason to attribute that much of our salary cap when I think that I don't think it's that big of a needle mover for me. Mason's not bad, man. I'm cool with Mason starting games for us.
Mason's not going to win you a playoff game is the thing, though.
You don't think so?
Mason's not good.
We're going to have to play Buffalo, Miami, or Kansas City is what it's seeming like.
Yeah. I just don't see the upside there, man.
The Steelers are playing
whatsoever.
I know the Seahawks defense is bad, but the thing that you mentioned with Najee, I have noticed with this entire team.
Yeah.
The Steelers are playing with a different kind of fire, and that's the final thing I want to give Mike Tomlin some real credit for, because I was really critical of Tomlin. This team has been really resilient, man. This is a team that's down 4 safeties, that's down 3 inside linebackers, that is down 2 corners. Wow. The amount of resilience and fire that we are seeing from the Steelers, it's just something that I have to stop. I do this every year with Mike when we hit a skid.
Yeah.
I just have to stop doubting Mike Tomlin, man.
It's unbelievable what he can do with limited talent. He's an incredible motivator. He's an incredible culture guy. He's a great defensive mind overall. The issue is just what we always say. The Steelers are going to have to come to terms with the fact that if you want to win in today's NFL in a meaningful way, not 9 games, if you want to contend, you have to have a dynamic offense. You have to have an elite talent at the quarterback position. You have to have a franchise quarterback, and the Steelers have not sniffed that since Ben. And if they can come to terms with that, and if they can make a decisive move in one direction, like, to be clear, I wouldn't go for Kirk. I think they should scrap things. I think they should rebuild. I just don't think that's in the nature of the organization or Tomlin. And if you're going to be like, hey, let's win now, then get yourself a good quarterback who can win you a playoff game. I think that Kirk, in a situation like this, is that guy. Mason Rudolph is not. If Mason Rudolph was your day one starter, or Kenny, that's just unserious to me. That's unserious football offense in 2023.
Really quick, as a non-Steeler fan without your Steeler goggles on, I'm going to name some QBs. You tell me if you would rather have them and if you think the Steelers should pursue them next year. So, Kirk, you're full go. You're all for that.
He's way better than Mason Rudolph or Kenny Pickett.
Russell Wilson.
He is better than both of them.
Justin Fields.
He is better than both of them.
Sam Howell.
Well,
I mean, we got to figure out where the line is. You know what I mean?
Pretty marginal at this point. I don't know. I could see Mason Rudolph convincing me that he's better than Sam Howell over these next couple weeks. That's not a needle mover for me either way.
Okay.
But that's the tier that we're talking about. I don't think Sam Howell is a starter to build around. I think he's a journeyman, high-end backup, low-end starter. That's how I feel about Mason Rudolph. That's pretty much how I feel about Kenny.
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, I guess it's all going to come down to the playoff game this year, man. If the Steelers can somehow muster a playoff win with Mason Rudolph, man, I'm all for it, dude.
It would be unbelievable. I would not bet on it, though. But you know who's really going to try to win a playoff game this year, Logan? Both of whom would have certainly expected to do so before the year, but now it's a bit more of a question. The Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. Who do you think is the more dangerous team right now?
Jesus Christ, man. I don't know how long I can keep doing with this with the Chiefs, dude. Every year.
Do it.
I mean, every week it just, like, stacks. It's like I'm just fighting the odds. I can't say the Chiefs. I cannot say the Chiefs after this week. What the heck, man? Like the MVS mess this week is just sours me. I think both of these teams are in a really similar tier to one another. I think they're both really scary, terrifying teams. When we're talking about the upper echelon, the top-notch QBs, best guys in the world, they all lay in the AFC. You don't want to run into the Ravens, you don't want to run into the Bills, and you don't want to run into the Chiefs because they've got Lamar, Mahomes, and Josh Allen. And those are the dragons, so to speak, of the NFL.
Yeah.
I'd say the Bills, just because I really like the stride that their defense has hit. That being said, the Chiefs' defense has consistently been great. I'd like the play calling more, but it's really been about the guys stepping up. Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford, Ed Oliver, these guys coming together. And Josh Allen doesn't have a great game through the air, but he's effective in the red zone. I've liked the offensive play calling more. I just like the stride that the Bills have hit. I just don't know how I can say the Chiefs. This week, I mean, after just the receiving issues have just been so abysmal. MVS, I don't know how that guy has a job.
Yeah.
Ball hits his hands, and he blames Pat Mahomes for not putting it on the money.
Yeah.
Where's the self-awareness, dude? You dropped a TD. You sold the game single-handedly against Philadelphia. This one hits you in the hands, and you immediately go to blame your QB. I don't know. The Chiefs receiving room still leads the NFL this season in drops. Kadarius Toney and MVS suck. Isaiah Pacheco, shout out, 165 yards. It's his fourth game with 150 total yards. Like, these teams are really similar to me. Good defenses, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but just variables outside of them. I don't love either of these teams, but I would just say marginally Buffalo with how they've hit their stride with offensive play calling and their defensive personnel stepping up. Both of these teams are very, very similar to me, but I would marginally say Buffalo. The Chiefs' wide receiver issues are just, I don't know how the Chiefs can overcome them at this point in the season.
Yeah, I understand that. And that's what I've been saying when we talk about, can you have faith in them as a Super Bowl frontrunner like you've maintained? But both these teams are really flawed. I actually think it's the Chiefs by a slight margin.
Wow.
And sort of the theme of the episode for me, the better defense and better quarterback formula is tough to pass up on. And I think that the Chiefs have the much better defense. Now, the Bills' defense has been playing better as of late. That's true. The Cowboys game was so impressive what they did defensively. But outside of that, it's not like they've been great. I mean, they still blew the Eagles game. They were pretty good against the Chiefs. These last two games, they've played awful offenses. Like the Chargers with Easton Stick had arguably their best offensive game against the Bills. They've been basically inept against everybody else, and Buffalo had to clutch up to win that game. And then the Pats, like the first quarter and most of the first half of this game was hilarious because it was just turnover after turnover. Shout out Rasul Douglas. That dude just makes big-time plays. But then Bailey Zappi's making dudes miss in space. He's scrambling. The Pats were able to move the ball down the field a bit as this game progressed. Like, I just can't put the Bills defense, even though I do think it's playing better, on that level of the Chiefs defense that has been so consistently great. And I think that Buffalo has shown a higher ceiling because they played a game like they did against Dallas. The Chiefs really haven't looked like that all year. They haven't had that game against a good team where they just blow them out of the water. But then the last 2 weeks, they've sucked again. The Bills have just flat out sucked. And 2 of their last 3 wins have come where Josh basically just chilled against Dallas, didn't really have to do anything. And then he was outright bad this past game. It was as awful a start to a Josh Allen game as I've seen. Didn't complete a pass forever, was just out of sync. I think that Bill Belichick schemed up a nice game. I think that the Pats got pressure, but Josh, some of his decision-making, I mean, his interception just throwing straight up into double coverage, he was just bad. And although I still think he is QB2 for me, again, Lamar is closing in on that. He's really closing in. And Pat just never really lays duds like that. I think people can overstate how much Josh does it, but this was a game where he was just like bad. The Bills' defense has been better. They've been running the ball way better. But I don't know, man. I still see a team that is really inconsistent, and that concerns me.
Both of these teams are puzzling in that respect, man.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird to me that we kind of flop on this because I've been so adamant on staying with the Chiefs. And
yeah,
I want to be clear. I think all of these teams are legit contenders in the AFC. When you have this kind of quarterback talent at the helm, again, NFL history has proven, like you said, Carson, the theme of this episode, QB and defense, that is the formula that's going to get you through the playoffs. All 3 of these teams are legit contenders. I just wanted to add, I know I've said this in shows previous, that it's so eerily similar to me, man, with Josh, and having watched Big Ben for so long, dude, I don't know what it is with the starts of these games. They are the rhythm thing, dude. When Josh, I would have PTSD from Ben because my dad and I, the first 2 drives of the game would tell you exactly the kind of game that Ben was going to have. If he was inaccurate or he threw a pick early, it was like, uh-oh, here we go. It is going to be a disaster of a game. Ben's going to throw 3 picks. He's going to need to throw 2 late TDs in like 4 minutes for us to win this game.
Yeah. Or
he immediately comes out and he's on target with everybody and we're rolling, and it's going to be a 4 TD, 1 interception, classic Big Ben game. It's just really eerie to me with, because like you said, with Pat, there is an remarkable consistency. Peyton Manning, traditionally, remarkable consistency. Brady, Breeze. I don't know what it is with Josh and Big Ben, man. When the start of the game, to me, really dictates with how the game always goes. I mean, do you feel the same way with me? Like, do you normally see when Josh doesn't, just to me, just doesn't have these crazy turnarounds mid-game. It's really, I don't know, it's a rhythm thing with him.
Sometimes he does, but he definitely just has some of those games where he's off. He is out of rhythm. And then he has those games where he's flawless. Like, he can definitely run hot and cold, and that does give the Bills a high ceiling, because when we have seen some of the pieces around him start to play better as of late, when he's at his best, yeah, they probably do have a higher ceiling than the Chiefs. But I do think that Kansas City, even with their flaws, it's more consistent, because you know that they're probably going to hold the opposing team to under 20. They're probably going to find their way to 20, like they've been losing games as of late. But I have a little bit more faith in that. I don't think either of these teams have a very good chance against the Ravens, though. It's like, what do any of them do better than Baltimore? It would have to take an unbelievable Mahomes or Allen game and a letdown Lamar game, which we just haven't seen this year.
Yeah, or, I mean, them faltering right at the end. I don't want to... The thing with... you say that now. I think that's because we're looking at this right after, I mean, they just moved the ball impeccably well against Miami. The thing with Lamar and them, it's just going to be about Kansas City or Buffalo slowing down Baltimore in the red zone. That, to me, is the key more than anything. Like, we say that Miami couldn't stop anybody. I think if we get Baltimore, Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, it's going to be a battle of the Titans. That's going to be a great game with the quarterback play that we're going to get. The final thing I wanted to mention was the stat going around. Most games with a perfect passer rating. I meant to say this earlier. Lamar now has tied for the most perfect passer rating games ever. Carson, I don't know if you saw this stat. Do you know the other 4 quarterbacks on this list?
Steve Young.
Oh, unfortunately not.
Patrick Mahomes.
Ooh, no.
Jeez. All right. Well, this list is worthless to me. Those are like the efficiency gods.
Some Rushmore guys and then quarterbacks.
Aaron Rodgers.
No, this is wild.
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady is here with 3.
All
these guys have 3. Here? Not Joe.
Peyton,
Brady, Lamar.
Drew Brees.
Not Brees, actually. 2 other QBs who won Super Bowls. 2 QBs who actually faced off against each other in a Super Bowl.
Oh, interesting. I was going to guess Russ. He's always been a passer rating god.
Not Russ.
Faced off in a Super Bowl.
These guys were more slingers, man. They like to sling that ball.
Elway?
Nah, 2009.
Okay, that'd be crazy.
Who faced off?
Oh, well, first of all, that's for the 2008 season. But Ben and Warner.
Big Ben and Kurt Warner.
Wow.
That's the entire list. All of them 3 perfect passer rating games. And again, considering all those guys are retired, man, Lamar has one more of those games. He's got the most in NFL history.
Wow. How about that? Yeah, I guess that I would just say the difference to me between the Ravens and the Chiefs and the Bills is that the Ravens are a great football team and the Bills and Chiefs aren't very good football teams. And I have maintained my optimism in their ceilings throughout, but it's like, my God, dude, every week I watch these teams and I'm just like, boy, when is it going to click, fellas? When is it going to click? The Bills had a few weeks where it was clicking, and then they just regress right back to this. And yeah, they play down to competition, and then they play up. And guess what? I still think they're going to beat the Dolphins this week.
Oh, yeah.
I think that without Bradley Chubb, I think they beat the Dolphins and they win the division. And wouldn't that be remarkable to win the division in 11 games after all of the shit that they have put viewers of their football through this year? And that's a testament to Josh Allen and this football team overall. But my God, there's been a lot of underwhelming football. Okay, Logan, we've talked about Justin Fields a couple times throughout this episode, but he just played a pretty fantastic game against the Atlanta Falcons. Has he proven to you that he deserves to keep his job as the Bears starter for the future?
To me, we're not asking the right question. I think the right question with this is, has Justin Fields done enough to justify passing on Caleb Williams? To me, throughout the entirety of this year, with the ups and downs, with him, showing his heart and crying during a football. How dare he, man? How dare Caleb Williams show passion for the game? That's the question to me, man. Can you pass on Caleb Williams? Because I don't know if everybody's heard, too. The Bears officially have the number 1 overall pick with the Panthers' loss. They're going to have multiple first-round picks. So, to me, there's 2 options with this. You get Marvin Harrison Jr., You get one of the O-linemen on the board. You either get Joe Alt or the interior guy. His name escapes me right now. You either do that and you go all in on Justin Fields, or you draft Caleb Williams and then you draft the other guy. You either take Marvin Harrison Jr. to pair with Caleb, him and DJ Moore, that's a scary tandem, or you get Joe Alt or the other O-lineman, beef up the buffet boys, and stack the line for the future. To me, Fields just hasn't done enough. I think Caleb Williams is a generational quarterback talent, a franchise talent. You know, I'm not going to compare him to Mahomes or anything now. It's Patrick freaking Mahomes, man. That's the greatest QB of all time. But I do think he's in that Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud. I buy into him completely turning around a franchise. Is it going to be the Bears? I don't know, man. The Bears have been searching for a 4,000-yard passer for 80 years now. They haven't done it. Justin has a big arm. He's got wheels. He's a big-time playmaker. Again, we remind you, he's got the second most rushing yards by a QB in a single season. I think he needs to be more accurate. He's got a 66.5 on-target percentage. That's the fourth worst mark in the NFL this season, behind Aiden O'Connell, Will Levis, and Kyler Murray. He needs to get rid of the ball and get through his progressions quicker. He's got the tied first highest snap-to-throw time in the NFL at 2.7 seconds. I want to be clear about something that's tied with Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson. This is a misleading stat. Just because you're very high in this does not mean that you hold on to the ball too long. Lamar Jackson, the reason his is so high is because he buys himself time. He dances around in the pocket, and he makes timely throws. With a guy like Justin Fields, his snap-to-throw time, I think, is a little more misleading because it's him taking time getting through his progressions. I just don't think he gets through his reads as quickly.
But it's certainly a combination of the two. I agree with you that Fields can't hold on to the ball for too long. He is also second only to Lamar, if second to Lamar, in terms of his ability to make dudes miss in the backfield. Because, I mean, Lamar is a little bit shiftier, right? Both these guys are crazy, and they're crazy fast in the open field. But Fields is a little bit bigger and stronger even. Like, you see that one play where he bounces off of 2 D linemen this past game. So it's a combination of the two, I would say.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Important distinction to make between the two. It's both of those factors come in to make that stat. With Fields, I just think it's a little more obvious when you watch on tape. He's just more prone to taking his time through his progressions and holding to the ball a little more problematically. That being said, I do think he deserves a shot somewhere else. If it's Atlanta, if it's New York, the Jets, or the Giants as a starter or as a backup, you know, the Saints. I think there's a lot of different, places throughout the league where you can look and say he could be the starter here. And I just mentioned the Saints because I just don't think Derek Carr is the guy. You can cut him after this season. Is it Denver? Denver's going to cut Russell Wilson. Fields deserves a shot somewhere else to be a starter. I think that's abundantly clear.
Yeah.
You've got one wide receiver one here. You've got decent O-line play. It's not an ideal situation. I'd like to see Fields in a better situation, but to me, if I'm the Bears GM, this isn't a thought to me. I'm doing the one scenario that I pointed out where you take Caleb and you either take the O-line or you take Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm just not passing on Caleb Williams. Where do you come down on this, Carson? If you were the Bears GM, what are you doing in this scenario?
Well, for what it's worth, the Bears aren't going to have a shot at a Marvin Harrison Jr. type with the
fair, because they've won too many games. Yeah,
they're too good. They're 7-9 now. So I think that we agree in terms of the final decision, but I am higher on Fields than you, it would seem, because I do think that this is at least cause for pause. That was pretty smooth right there.
So smooth.
If there was anybody other than like a very impressive QB1 prospect, and if you weren't going to have the number 1 overall pick, I would absolutely say that you buy into Justin Fields as your guy. Like, he has showed some of the most ridiculous elusiveness that anybody has all year, just in this past game. And he made some beautiful throws from inside the pocket. His first touchdown throw into the back corner of the end zone, like, just a crazy tight window. He put that ball right on the money. He still does have issues. I agree with you, holding onto the ball too long at times. Accuracy, timing, decision-making, all of that is fair. Those are issues. He is a great talent in terms of his physical attributes, but my feeling is just that, bottom line, if you pass on Caleb Williams, you are going to regret that. And I think that part of this is that, I don't want to call it the sunken cost fallacy, but there are shades of that in that once you've invested in a guy, you really want that to work out. And you are going to probably commit more to that working out, even if in a vacuum, right? How many people are going to tell you that Justin Fields is a superior long-term option, just apples to apples to Caleb Williams at this point? Not many people. Now, there's an argument to be made when you say, all right, if you trade the number 1 pick, you're going to get a haul for that, a larger haul than you would get for trading Fields straight up, right? If you trade with the Pats, who have that 3rd pick right now, then you can still get Marvin Harrison Jr., and you can probably get a couple firsts on top of that and a couple of later picks in the draft. And so now you can really build something. Now you've given Fields 2 really high-end weapons, 1 elite talent in Marvin Harrison Jr., and you can strengthen yourself in the trenches and maybe build that defense more. And so you would be gaining more resources as a whole, as a football team. But I just think when you pass up on the generational quarterback talent, you tend to live to regret that. You really do. And I think that Fields would be successful in that scenario where they really put good pieces around him, because he is working in an adverse situation. Like, outside of DJ Moore, the weapons here just aren't that good, and the line isn't good. And he has gone out there and won them some games with the level that he has played at. But I just don't think he's going to be as good as Caleb, and that's what it comes down to.
That's a great point with the sunken cost fallacy. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Money Pit. In 1986, it's Tom Hanks.
1986. Sure,
and
yes.
Him and his wife, they buy a house, and they're going to flip it, or they're going to build it back up. They get the tour of the house. It's really nice. It's beautiful. They don't see anything wrong with it. And then after they purchase the place, it just starts falling apart. And it's like they could eat the cost immediately, and they could sell the house and get their money back, or they hold on to it and try to restore it, and the house just ends up falling apart.
Safe to say chaos ensues for Mr. Hanks. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen it.
Very true. I think it drives a pretty major wedge in the relationship. The Money Pit does.
Do they work things out?
Unfortunately, it's been a minute since I've seen it. I was.
You saw it back in theaters.
Well, yes, obviously. I was an old man. I was in my 60s then. Yeah. But it's a great point. But you're exactly right, Carson. When that guy comes around, you don't think twice. You know what I mean? The Pittsburgh Steelers are still reeling from the fact that they passed on Dan Marino in the draft. When that guy comes around and you think that that's the guy, you don't think twice about it. You pull the trigger, because you're right. Look at what teams have done with the picks. Look at what they did last year when they traded down. They got an absolute haul. If you're going to get a lot of capital back, maybe consider it, but I'm not doing it. It's not enough. I'm not passing on the franchise guy, because look at what the Panthers did, man. They meddled around. They passed on the guy. Granted, they took a guy that they thought was going to be the franchise guy. Shout out David Tepper. Shout out throwing drinks on fans. Man, dude, I don't think there's going to be any repercussions for that, Carson. That was a really weird storyline. It doesn't look like the NFL is going to do anything about that. What a douche. Am I right?
Yeah, am I right?
Yeah, you don't pass on the franchise QB borderline, man. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I don't know if the Panthers comparison is the right one, because as you said, I mean, they thought that they were getting their guy. They actually went all in to try to get their guy. They traded their star receiver, and they traded lots of draft assets to make that happen. But you do live to regret it for the most part. That is the most valuable building block that you can have, and I think that some people are out on Caleb. I think that people are out on Caleb because of things that don't have to do with him, bro. Because of nail painting, because of crying, because the USC defense was bottom 5 in all of D1 college football. Caleb is a hell of an athlete. He's big. He's strong. He is an unbelievable arm talent. He is one of the great improvisers that you can have out of structure. He's going to be awesome. Like, that's just a dude who I would say is pretty much stamped to be a franchise quarterback. And, right, Fields is he's a surer thing in that you've seen him in the NFL and you've seen that he's a solid starting quarterback. But Caleb feels like as sure of a thing as you can have in a prospect, in a guy who hasn't set foot on the NFL field with real upside. I would take that guy. Okay, Logan, as this playoff picture starts to finalize, we have a real interesting race for that 7 seed in the NFC, which we've talked about all year, how underwhelming that race is. But of all the candidates for that spot, the Packers, the Bucs/Saints, both of them are 8-8. One of them is going to win the division. The other one could grab that wild card spot. Or the Seahawks, who is scariest?
Yes, all these teams have their fatal flaws. The Seattle Seahawks can't stop anyone. Electric offensively, playmakers everywhere. JSN, DK Metcalf can run the ball. I hope Kenneth Walker's healthy. He had an arm injury against the Steelers.
Yeah.
That could be pretty major. But their fatal flaw, they cannot stop the run. I mean, the Steelers just abused them all game long. Got a ton of push up front. So I think that defense is getting cooked against anybody. They don't scare me. The Saints, they have Derek Carr at quarterback, for Christ's sake. Come on, man. Why am I going to buy into the Saints? Their defense, and their team basically, stays at a geriatric facility. They're just a bunch of old heads. So they're old, and Derek Carr plays for them. So I don't like the Saints. The Green Bay Packers intrigue me. They intrigue me quite a bit. With Jordan Love.
He's shaping up to say the Bucks. You think I can't see this coming?
Come on, man. It was always the Bucks. It's the old Indiana Jones, man. I gotta give you the old bait and switch, man. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield might have a rib injury, so that kind of puts it, that hurts.
He was really good this past week, huh, Logan? Your guy was great.
I don't really want to talk about it. They've got the best weapons to me in a single game playoff setting. That's what we're talking about. They have a high offensive ceiling, I believe, where Evans, Godwin, and again, with this plan, Baker Mayfield has to play well. That's the bottom line, and that's the fatal flaw for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You got to trust Baker Mayfield to play well in an individual setting. I love Baker Mayfield. That's not a sure thing. It's not a sure thing for the Green Bay Packers either with Jordan Love. It's really a flip of a coin. But the Bucs have Mike Evans, they have Chris Godwin, they have Rachaad White. They have consistently made big plays all year long, and Baker Mayfield has shown us to a point that he can get the ball to him in space, he can be accurate and on time, and he can protect the football. And then defensively, the Buccaneers are pretty damn good. Game to game. I don't know. To me, it's the Bucs or the Packers. The Seahawks defense is too bad. I'm not betting on Derek Carr. To me, it's Green Bay or Tampa Bay, and we saw these teams play head-to-head, and so I'll go with the team that won. And again, I know this is kind of tongue-in-cheek because we just saw the Bucs and Saints play, and the Bucs got beat, but I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I like my corked-up white boy with a little bit of swag, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
I like their weapons. I like their defense. And I've been rocking with the Bucs all year, man. It's been the one take that I've stayed that I've been pretty staunch on. I'll ride with the Buccaneers till the wheels fall off. Let's go, Baker.
Well, the Bucs,
no way,
in reality, are probably just going to flat out win the division. No, I'm not going to give some
come on, Carson.
I love Baker take. I'm not going to do that for you right now.
It's time, man.
Well, guess what? He's going to get them in the playoffs because they play the fucking Panthers. They play the Panthers, and they have the tiebreaker in the division. So, in all reality, they're probably not even going to be a wild card team. But I do think that out of all of these four, the Packers are the scariest. Jordan Love is playing at an awesome level. Jordan Love or Baker Mayfield, Logan? Who do you want?
Baker Mayfield, duh.
Why? Seriously, are you being serious?
I am being 100% serious.
Okay.
I want Baker Mayfield. He's a corked up white boy with a little bit of swag.
He is. Okay. What about then, a couple weeks ago, you said that you would rather have Joe Flacco than Jordan Love. Who would you rather have between the two of them now?
Jordan Love or Joe Flacco?
Yeah.
Joe Flacco.
Do you hate Jordan Love? What is this?
I'm not quite fond of him, no.
Joe Flacco can't move, bro.
Joe Flacco is him.
Joe Flacco is playing well, but all I'm saying is that dude is a statue. He's trying to get rid of that ball fast. And, he's made some plays. He can still throw the ball downfield, but my goodness, against a really good pass rush, I'm a little bit concerned about that. And I think the Browns are really good. I think he's playing well enough. He's a huge upgrade from who they've had. That defense is good. The Browns are certainly a better football team than the Packers, but Jordan Love is a better quarterback than Joe Flacco.
I don't want to flex my muscle too much, but damn, man. I said, what was it, week 3, week 4, if the Browns get average quarterback play, that they could be an AFC, title or Super Bowl contender. All it took was Joe Flacco, man. Yeah, I don't know, dude. I think Joe Flacco's kind of still a baller.
I like Joe Flacco. Jordan Love over his last 7 weeks. 262 yards per game, 16 touchdowns, 1 interception, 7.4 yards per attempt, 110 passer rating. He is good. And if you don't want to do your Jordan Love apology, if you want to keep saying that you like Baker Mayfield and Joe Flacco off his couch more, that's fine. I'm apologizing to Jordan Love because I thought coming into this year, early in this year, you're looking at sort of a journeyman, below average starter. The kind of guy who is going to have a job in this league for a long time, but you're not going to give multiple big money contracts to. Maybe you stick with him for a few years, but eventually you just want a guy who is going to give you a higher ceiling, and I think that undersold him. He had some awesome throws in this game. That first touchdown, flat-footed, puts it right in the window between the two DBs closing in. I mean, he had multiple clutch throws off of his back foot. He was just putting on a show. He was putting on a show, and I owe him an apology for that. He is tied for the third most touchdowns in the entire NFL right now.
Damn.
And touchdowns clearly are not the best metric of things. Russell Wilson has more passing touchdowns than Lamar Jackson this year, and I think that sometimes people will just look at touchdown-interception ratio and say that's how good this guy is, and it's just not true. There's so many factors. Who gets those red zone touches? What are the scenarios finishing those drives? But I mean, the guy's got 34 touchdowns, 30 through the air, 4 on the ground. He does bring that ability to scramble and make plays with his legs. He's just awesome. And I don't love the Packers defense, but I like it more than the Seahawks. And I trust their quarterback play and their overall offense a lot more than the Bucs, Logan, whether you like it or not. And Baker doesn't suck. He's certainly better than Kenny Pickett, but he's unreliable.
Man,
he's volatile.
What a low blow. What a low blow.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Oh.
We're just discussing where these guys rank as NFL quarterbacks.
So Kenny Pickett sucks.
Wait, he's not good. He's definitely not as good as Baker.
Does Kenny Pickett suck?
I think he's a backup. I think he's a good backup.
That's a yes. You could just say yes.
I mean, roughly, yes. Approximately, I would say so. Yeah.
All right.
You gonna be all right with that?
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, you said
Okay.
Baker Mayfield was better than somebody. I'll take that, man. It's the small wins. It's the small victories.
Yeah, dude, listen, I don't even view myself as like an anti-Baker guy. I feel that some people are starting to feel that way about me. Bro, that's because people are coming out here saying that Baker's a top half of the league starter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel that way.
No, he's not. He's probably like right below the equator.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I wouldn't push back on that too hard, but that's just what I'm saying, bro. Like, the league, there's a lot of good quarterbacks.
In the NFC South, in the NFC South, slightly below mediocre is good enough to get the job done, man.
I will say, Logan, coming into this year, we had the discussion of Baker versus Derek Carr. Who did we trust most in that division at the quarterback position? I said Derek Carr. You said Baker. I think I have switched to Baker in that conversation. So in the mid-off of the century, Baker is coming out on top, and that's a real achievement. That's a real achievement for him. All right, everybody. That's going to do it for us here today. Appreciate you all listening. Hope you had a wonderful New Year's Eve celebration and that you are going into 2024 with some excellent vibes, perhaps some great resolutions. Logan's is that he's going to grow even more hair. The hair just made a soft launch on TikTok to rave reviews, people saying things like, you have hair? Where did that come from? So more of that coming in 2024. Yeah,
I may have more hair coming soon, too, if I have to rock a toupee.
That's true. That's true. Could be a new look for Logan. Really new year, new me. If you want more Logan, then you can always watch our full shows on YouTube, the Nerd Sesh YouTube page. You can just listen to his voice again, then you don't get to see the hair if it does make an appearance. Across all audio platforms, you can check us out on TikTok at Nerd Sesh and Instagram, same handle, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. Clips from the show, all of the trivia stuff that we do is there. You can check us out on Cameo if you want any custom messages, videos from the nerds, and you can join our Discord at the link tree across our social media bios. You can also get yourself some Nerd Sesh merch. We've got the flags behind us, we've got hats, we've got shirts, we've got hoodies, all of that at thevolume.com. And with that, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.